Hey educators, let's talk about ownership of the early childhood centers. There are many different types of ownership in Australia. For example, for-profit, non-for-profit, community-based, owned by local government or other providers. So we have a lot of different providers in early childhood education and care. And one of the largest group is for-profit, large for-profit providers or chain centers that may own more than one center and they might be present across different regions of Australia. A typical example of for-profit provider is G8. G8 owns 400 centers and it is one of the biggest providers in Australia. I worked for the agency that would place me in many G8 centers. They do buy small services in here where I live and quite often rebuild them or improve them in terms of the environment and then streamline the programming and planning. The second big provider is Affinity Education Group, so it's quite significant. It manages over 180 centers nationwide. Next one is Guardian Childcare Education. It's a big organization. From what I remember, it's about 110 centers, but they always acquire more, and they are present in major cities and regional areas. So just around this area, we have at least 4 centers. They all are spacious, large, and quite nice looking centers. I would say with a lot of support for programming and planning. So I enjoyed working as a relief EC for this company, Guardian. Post in the comments below if you actually worked for any of these companies and what was your experience. Now, next one is Explorers Early Learning, for-profit provider, over 50 centers focusing on radio-inspired curriculum sustainability. I really like how they try to incorporate Radio Emilia, and the environments are really nice looking and green. The documentation is quite strong. I would love to visit more of them. So far, my impression is pretty good, and I also talked to one of my students who worked for this center, and she's pretty happy. Next one is Nido Early School, also claims to be inspired by Radio Emilia approach. So I have been to a few in the suburb in Glen Waverley. So I quite liked the center's look. It was during COVID, so they didn't really have a lot of babies, so it was very peaceful and lovely. So I liked the centers, how they have a reception, but I have not worked for any of these companies. Next provider, for-profit, large provider that owns more than 20 centers, 39 approximately, operates in Victoria, Queensland, South Australia, called Mayfield childcare. My friend works in one of those centers. It used to be a center where I started, and then it was acquired by this company. It does provide support in terms of educational program, and it has quite a lot of requirements from early childhood educators. In terms of conditions, I'm not in a position to tell because I've not worked for this center. So if you did, post in the comments below. Next one, and it's not an extensive list, it's just to give anyone who is new to the early childhood education and care sector an overview of what these companies look like. Is Embrace Education, smaller for-profit provider with 24 centers focusing on community quality care. I have not been to these centers and I have not seen how they operate. I picked a few, specifically the ones that I've seen or have been to or had students in, but I also have visited smaller for-profit centers. They have more than one center, so usually 4 or 5. For example, Grasshoppers Early Learning, really great centers in the local area. And I really liked other centers such as Sparrow Early Learning. So they do own more than one center, so which makes them kind of provider that has more than one center. In the next video, I'm gonna talk about the difference between a for-profit and non-for-profit centers, and the biggest non-for-profit provider in Australia is, can you guess? It's Good Start Early Learning.